It's 62 degrees in downtown Washington. The time is now 7 o'clock. By recording from New York, WETA Radio now presents Inside Gene Shepard.
Good evening, culture fans. My God, what a fantastic world it is. Look at all those things out there moving, shifting in the darkness. Yes. We were crowded in the cabin. Not a soul would dare to sleep. It was midnight on the waters, and a storm was on the deep. Yes, 'tis a fearful thing in winter to be shattered in the blast, and to hear the rattling trumpet thunder, "Cut away the mast!" So we shuddered there in silence, for the stoutest held his breath, while the hungry sea was roaring, and the breakers talked of death. And thus we sat in darkness, each one busy in his prayers. "We are lost!" the captain shouted as he staggered down the stairs. But his little daughter whispered as she took his icy hand, "Isn't God upon the ocean just the same as on the land?" And then we kissed the little maiden, and we spoke in better cheer, and we anchored safe in harbor when the morn was shining clear. Hold it there. Thank you. That's enough. Hold it. Cut it. Thank you, dear. That's very nice. Thank you, John. I just thought a little culture here. Speaking of culture, I'll tell you, the reason this all came up, I got a letter the other day from somebody who said, "Shepard, I read your stuff in Playboy, and I read your novels and stuff, and how come you never write any poetry?" That's a good question. And I think a question that should be answered and deserves to be answered, by God, because poetry is part of the Western world's heritage of culture, correct? A man of good taste must understand, know, feel, and appreciate poetry if he's going to be part of the general culture wave of Western world, going all the way back through Shakespeare beyond to Beowulf himself. Well, I think one of the reasons almost all of us secretly, I shouldn't say almost all of us, large numbers of us, dislike poetry is because of the poetry we get in school. And, since this is Culture Night, I'm going to have to admit to you that I have a genuine antipathy. Now, once I start to read poetry, I like it. But it's like going to the dentist. once I get in the chair, I give myself up and I say, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. You can do what you want, you know. And it's poetry can be destroyed by the least subtle of means. For example, speaking of poetry, the other day I'm sitting in this elegant French restaurant down in the village. Now, it was very romantic. And, they had everything. They were the mussels in garlic sauce and the elegant French wine, the candlelight and the whole bit. And, everything was kind of soft and hazy and romantic, and you had 3 or 4 glasses of this French wine. McDarrah, you're a wine type. You know the type of wine I was drinking then, right? So it's a kind of right, you know. And I had a little French pâté, enjoying the evening, and after the meal, which was very, very poetic, the demi-tasse was served. Somebody called for café au lait. That is, the girl called for café au lait, and I called for espresso. At which point the waitress, who was an elegant French waitress, came in and gave us our café au lait and our demi-tasse, and we're sitting there enjoying it. And the girl I was with says, "May I have some sugar with my café au lait?" And so I said, "Please, Miss, sucre, s'il vous plaît." And she says, "Mais oui." And she rushes out to get the sugar, right? And she brings the sugar in and puts it down in front of me. Now, here we are in this elegant French restaurant. What do you expect? You expect little tiny petite cubes, wouldn't you? Maybe, perhaps, elegantly served with little silver tongs. What do we get? We get a bunch of these little envelopes. There's nothing that kills the romance of a moment than to have sugar served in envelopes that have various ads all over them. And this particular ad really killed the whole idea of poetry. Here we had this great moment going, and the girl takes this little envelope of sugar out, and on the outside it says, "Tommy Bartlett's Wild Animal Circus," in red, white, and blue letters. Tommy Bartlett's Wild Animal Circus, the Dells, Wisconsin. Now, how in the hell they got sugar that advertised Tommy Bartlett's Wild Animal Circus in the Dells, Wisconsin, I have no idea. And I will award a brass figurine with bronze oak leaf palm to any of you out there who can tell me who Tommy Bartlett is. You think you're a trivia fan? Did you ever hear the name Tommy Bartlett? Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. It's funny how people don't really, they're not really interested in true trivia. True trivia is genuinely trivial. I mean, let's face it, Humphrey Bogart is not trivial. People always think of Humphrey Bogart. What picture did Humphrey Bogart play in 1937? This is not trivial. It was probably a $7 million production. True trivia is that which is almost immediately forgotten, in spite of the fact it was immensely popular. That's trivia, friend. Very few people remember Marv Throneberry, in spite of the fact that Marv Throneberry was immensely popular at one point in time. Where is Marv Throneberry today when we don't need him? This has been asked many, many times. Nobody knows. Where are the Rod Keneals of yesteryear? But the fact is, Tommy Bartlett was one of the big names. He disappeared instantly. And now he has a wild animal circus in the Dells, Wisconsin. And here, in the middle of all this, we're having this romantic moment. This girl takes this thing, see? Here I'm about to move in for the kill. She takes the envelope and says, "Say, who is this Tommy Bartlett?" Forget it. It's all over. We spent the next 20 minutes arguing about wild animal circuses, Tommy Bartlett, and the Dells of Wisconsin. Now, who was Tommy Bartlett? I'm not going to tell you. The hell with you. If you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. If your knowledge of American pop trivia culture is that low, don't come to me for instruction. I mean, this is beyond the scope of your knowledge, friend. You should be down there listening to Cousin Fig Newton or whatever the hell he is down there playing that pimple music. Get down there. That's where you belong. But I'm serious. That's probably where you are anyway. But this, here it is. Now, if you think that I'm inventing this, and it's just only because Shepard has this vast memory of bad stuff. Here it was in a village French cafe. I did not invent the news. There it is. Who was Tommy Bartlett? He was also popular at the same time that a guy made his great fame running around wearing ladies' hats and giving out orchids to elderly ladies. Who was that? Don't know who he is either, huh? Okay. Well, that's good enough. I'm beginning to believe that there are just a few people out of every given 100,000 in population who actually see the world they live in. All the rest get it through WINS, you know, which is filtered through a glass darkly, friends. And it's a it's a kind of a sad thing to see this. It's true. Tommy Bartlett's Wild Animal Circus in the Dells, Wisconsin. I'm not gonna say. I could pull out other ones like this that you undoubtedly at one time were very heavily influenced by, and you don't even know that you were. You don't remember it. All right, I'll ask you another one. Who was the poet? Speaking of poetry, there was a poet that was in every newspaper, like he was published in newspapers all the time. Every day there would be a poem by this guy in the newspaper. I don't know what paper carried him in New York, but about 3 of them did. It's just recently, too. And he was the most published poet in the history of poetry. Because not many guys get syndicated as a poet in 795 newspapers, including 422 overseas editions. That's a lot of 5 days a week he writes a poem. Who was that? Okay, see, there you go. Well, your knowledge of culture is very limited. Now, I'm asking you about your own field, poetry, right? You claim that you're a culture hound. Okay, so I just say that I think that many of us from the time we were little kids, were turned off of stuff that we should be turned on to. Like I have tried repeatedly. I have attempted to enjoy Shakespeare. Now, I'm going to be honest with you that I've even played in it. You may be surprised to hear that, but I have. Yes, I have. In fact, at one point, I was trained as a classical actor, and I did many pieces of classical poetry and drama on stage with audiences. And I know many a Shakespearean actor who secretly does not enjoy Shakespeare. He enjoys acting. That's not the same as enjoying Shakespeare. Now, I say it goes back to traumatic experiences that we had in school. One of the most traumatic experiences I ever had in school was the time we had this teacher named Miss E. McCullough, known better among the more erudite students as Elephant McCullough. And for obvious reasons, if you knew Miss McCullough, she had everything but a trunk. And, in fact, there was a vestigial trunk there. And E. McCullough had a real thing on Shakespeare. Now, this was in my second year in high school. When you start you're a sophomore. And this was a terrible moment. She, up to this point, anytime we had English, we're always reading Lady of the Lake. I can remember endless English class reading Lady of the Lake, which, by the way, I think has turned the entire 5 generations off of reading. And no wonder the comic book is the chief source of literature now for the average slob. Once you have met Lady of the Lake, you just don't go back for seconds. Once you spend your time grazing in Silas Marner, you just don't go back for another helping. It's just the way it is. So Miss E. McCullough turned us off of Shakespeare in one swell swoop, one cut of the sword. This is like the second day. In Miss McCullough's class, the first thing she had one of these voices, there's certain kind of women who talk like this, and you're all going to enjoy this class, and all you have to do is just enjoy. Oh my God, I just get sick thinking of E. McCullough. I can remember her say, she was one of these very loud, would have made a wonderful, wonderful second. She could have sat right next to Bella. She would have made a terrific trilogy, Bella, Gloria, and Elephant McCullough. Because she had the kind of trumpet-like voice that is always associated with being a forceful lady. And she was a trumpet. She would say, "Oh, of course, my God, this is WOR, New York, an RKO General Station, naturally. This is she had that kind of hoarse voice, and she had the kind of voice that she has studied vocal techniques and diction at Bryn Mawr. Hey, speaking of things that turned you off, I mean, if you think that Lady of the Lake did it, I would like to submit to you that one that even topped that was Ivanhoe. There was always somebody named Sir Mordred. But I must tell you a little more about Shakespeare, because it was a real fantastic, dramatic moment. Miss E. McCullough said, boys and girls, if I have done nothing else as a teacher, I would like to pride myself on saying that I have brought the enjoyment, the deep enjoyment of the bard to thousands of children. Incidentally, that type of lady, may I tell you this, Steve, is found, a great deal of those ladies are found on PBS, public broadcasting. There's nothing more, let's say, educational. If you really want to understand what kids don't like and do like, is to watch an educational type show that's run by a hearty lady surrounded by children. Like the other day, one of these ladies suddenly appeared. They said, we will now rejoin the show in progress. And here's a lady with her hand-woven Mexican tweed skirt. You can just see she makes her jewelry out of hand-baked ceramics and that stuff. And she's talking like this. She says, boys and girls, now, all of you really love to watch an artist at work, don't you, boys and girls? And these two little kids sitting there, looking at her. Now, boys and girls, we're going to paint, and we're going to watch an artist paint. Isn't that right, boys and girls? Don't we all enjoy watching an artist paint, boys and girls? And now, boys and girls, before we do that, I'd like to sing a little song for you that we learned back in the days when I was a little girl, and we learned these songs at my mother's knee, songs of Wales. Oh, I was sitting by the seashore. And the kids are looking. You can just see this, the look of cream of wheat boredom, the kind of boredom that makes you itch to watch it. And these two little victims are standing next to her throughout the entire show. They don't say anything except once in a while, and she would then. At the end of the show, this hearty lady says, and now, boys and girls, haven't we had a good time today here at Hodgepodge Lodge? At which point one of the kids goes, yes, and boys and girls, tomorrow we're going to learn how to weave Mexican baskets. Isn't that going to be exciting, boys and girls? Yes, tomorrow we're going to have a Mexican basket weaver, and for all of you boys and girls, goodbye, boys and girls out there in television land, until tomorrow when we see you at Hodgepodge Lodge. Goodbye, boys and girls, goodbye. God deliver us from hearty ladies who weave their own skirts. Bring it up. Oh, yeah. I used to love the way the world turned, the way that sky looked up there, ba-ba-boo, 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 and the birds flew overhead, and the clouds went drifting by, ba-ba-boo, 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 and the water danced and sparkled under that great big old shining sun. But then I ran into official culture, and I began to do something to my deep, deep, deep soul. Ba-ba-boo-boo-boo-boo. And I discovered there are things one does just because one does them things, because them things is the right things to do. Yeah. I used to love to hear them horns, them jazz horns blowing in the quiet twilight. Blowing the blues, singing the songs, talking about the way life really is. Ba-ba-boo, ba-ba-doo-doo-doo-boo. Used to dig it. Sit there with my foot moving up and down. The sound of the horns blowing through my soul. Yeah. Little did I know that I was listening to basic primitive American culture. Second semester, 3 credit hours, with a defrocked reverend giving the lectures. It wasn't until I discovered that I was in culture that I began to lose interest. Come on, hear that thing, man. Blow it. I say blow it. Thank you, Ed. I think you like my singing, Ed, underneath all that scoffing and sneering. But you know, I and I don't blame you, man. I just think though that sometimes we are turned off things by the way we're introduced to them, and I just wonder where the answer lies. I'm very serious about that. I think that. I remember the day that this teacher, E. McCullough, and you went to some Shakespeare last night, didn't you, Jerry? And it's great. Under certain circumstances with the sky and the clouds and all that stuff, you know. I think that's, you go up to Stratford maybe, and it's a very pleasant afternoon. But there's another side to it. And that's the side to it when you get the Blue Book exam. And I remember that terrible moment when Miss E. McCullough says, "Boys and girls, Shakespeare is to enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Remember, he was an Englishman writing about his time, boys and girls. And of course, since his time was the time of the poet, the man looking at his world, I'm sure that all of you will realize the importance and the basic relevance to our daily lives." Well, I'm not sure that King Lear has much relevance to the daily life of a kid going to the Warren G. Harding School. But she was very sure of it. Could very well have something to do with her life, too. Maybe incipient madness, I don't know. But nevertheless, the moment when she said, "And boys and girls, the best way for us to enjoy Shakespeare is to actually perform him. After all, you know, boys and girls, he's a playwright. His magical words are to be heard. They're not to be read in a quiet room. They are to be heard, played by living players. And so I would like all of you, each one of you, to select a scene that you would like to do for the class, and we will have our scenes beginning next Monday. And it's going to be fun, fun, fun." Oh, my God almighty. Of all the things I remember doing in school, and, let's face it, all of us spend a lot of years. It's interesting when you think of the number of years you have spent in education of one kind or another. I'm talking about classical education, where you're going to a place to be educated. Most people have graduated from high school. Well, all right, there for starters, that's 12 years. That's just for starters. Large numbers of other people have gone to college. It's another 4 years, 3 or 4 years. So that's, add that to the 12. How many is that now? That's, 16 years. Some then go on to graduate school. Add another 2 years for graduate school, 16, 18 years. Now stop and think that out. That's just a little hair this side. Now, that's graduate. That's a little hair this side of 20 years. That's fascinating. Now, on the other, now 20 years. Well, now stop and think about this. You know what the actuarial tables say, don't you? That the average life expectancy of the male animal in America today is just a little shade over 69 years, give or take 6 or 8 months one way. Now, that's the average life expectancy. Let's say 70 years. Let's just say, for argument's sake, 70. We'll be generous about it. 70 years. Now, the first, how many years of your life are spent just sitting there, counting your toes, with your tongue hanging out at a highly undignified angle, dribbling at all pores, right? Okay, so that's we'll say that's about 4 or 5 years right there. About the time, let's assume that that your life really begins when you start to start oscillating. You're about 6. Up to that time, you're just a heap of mashed potatoes with feet. I mean, really. So now you're 6, right? All right, so add that 6 now to the, let's just for argument's sake, 16 years of the average person. Let's say the average guy goes to college today. 16 years. Add 6 to that, and you have 22 years. Now that means almost 1/3 of your life is spent preparing to exist. Now let's take the other side. Now, on the other end of the scale, how many years do you spend sitting there trying to keep your upper plate in? In other words, you're quietly sitting over in the corner now with your head lolling, and you're returned to the first 6 years. You're drooling in unexpected places and having difficulty with your bladder, and you're jumping up and running in and out of the room all the time. Your shoe keeps falling off. The average, this is at the other end of the scale. That's another 4 or 5 years, we'll say, right? So we have to lop that off too, or add it to the first. So we wind up with practically 30 years. Out of the, let's say, possible 70, or close to half, that is preparing you to do whatever it is you're supposed to do, exist, live. Now, that's a long time. In fact, that's longer than most other countries' life expectancies. Many other countries, not most, many. I mean, so it produces a very interesting character, the Western man. He's quite different from other men because he always thinks of his life as basically a preparation. And you even hear it in some of our religious attitudes. It's overtone. Yes, are you prepared to die? You don't. Are you prepared to die? Have you seen that one on the bumper stickers? Well, all right. It's, in other words, you even prepare for this. So life is basically a preparation. Whereas in many of the Eastern countries, it's very different. That the minute a person is, say, 4, you really see it. You go to a place like India, and here's a 4-year-old kid walking down the street with a pot on his head, carrying something. He's working. He's not going to the store for his mommy. He's working. And he's working. He's sweeping a street. And he's being paid to do it. That would be unthinkable in America. And I'm not advocating it, but I'm just saying this is the way a different kind of man evolves. He arrives differently. So by the time he's 12 or 13 in many parts of India, he is a man he really is. And so getting married at 12 or 13 is not at all considered unusual in India. Why should it be? He's probably been working 6 or 7 years already, and I mean, and furthermore, his life expectancy is about 28. So life is not a matter of preparation. Life is a matter of doing, and you either do or you don't. And so I'm just curious, how much of our preparation really is an end in itself, which means that you're not really preparing for anything. You're doing a thing. So in Miss E. McCullough's class, I didn't think I think she had the illusion she was preparing us for Shakespeare. But let's put it this way, she was doing in Shakespeare, which meant that it was the end in itself. This was the Shakespeare that most of us would ever get in our lives, not because we were slobs or clods, or because there was a cultural gap between the effete East. No way. It was because of E. McCullough. and she says, yes, boys and girls, enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. So there I was. I didn't know quite what to do. I mean, pick a scene from Shakespeare. And we had these paperback books, that were Shakespeare, we had one called The Complete Shakespeare, the big, thick, fat one. And, you know, you had a lot of scenes you could pick from. And not one kid, by the way, picked the scenes which later all actors want to do. I don't recall one kid saying, to be or not to be. Not one kid did this, out of all the kids in the class. We picked strange scenes. Now, are you curious what scene? I was going home from school that day, and there was a guy that I knew named Chuck Hassan. I haven't, thought of him. And for some reason, he played a major role in that year in school because we were both together in the middle of one of the worst debacles that I've ever had in my life. Chuck Hassan and myself and Stanley Roper were coming home, and we're sitting in a bus, and we're profoundly depressed because there's a certain phase in your life when if you're called upon to get up in front of the class, this profoundly depresses you. I wonder how many guys that are listening tonight steered all the way through their lives, steered clear of that deadly course in school called public speaking. Did you have it in school, lad? You have a course? Did you take it? Did you, Jerry? You took it. Well, it was an elective in my school. And that school, the number of people who went to public speaking were almost always a lot of tremendous extrovert types who were always taking public speaking, and they loved that kind of thing, But the great mass of the kids completely ducked the whole concept of public speaking to get up there and do this thing. Well, here we were, all of a sudden, we got to do the Shakespeare. Well, at that point, I was deeply involved in playing football, as was Chuck Hassan. By the way, a better than average blocking back, in case you're curious. He was good. And Stanley Roper was a tall, skinny guy who played on the second basketball. He was a basketball player. So we're sitting in the bus, the school bus coming home, and Hassan says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." So we did what a lot of people often do. We decided that in numbers there is strength. If you have to get up by yourself and say, you got this fake skull, and say to be or not to be, you're up there by yourself, But if you did a scene where there's three guys together, it's kind of groovy. So we did a scene. We picked a scene, the only one we could find, a scene that involved three people. And we had no idea what it was about. I mean, we couldn't conceive, what the hell this was about. But instinctively, we picked this scene because it seemed to us to be vaguely funny. Now, we couldn't figure out why, because, let's face it, we were basically total illiterates. And then it's not at all unusual that you don't quite get what the hell you're talking about when you're reading Shakespeare. So you know what we did? We did the scene that involved, you recall the scene that involved Bottom, the tinker? Remember that scene? And I played Bottom. I don't know why. I played Bottom. So we played this scene. We studied it. We decided, how we were going to play it. And we tried to memorize the words and all that kind of stuff. And the day that we got up there, again, this was E. McCullough killing us. Now, had she let us just go up there and make total fools of ourselves and done the thing and then said, that was very nice, or saying, maybe you ought to practice it some more or something like that, we'd have been all right. But here's what she did. I got up on the stage there and was up in the front. We had a platform in the front of the class, see, and Chuck Hassan's on one side and the other guys on the other side, see. Stanley's on the other side. So we began a scene. And Miss McCullough says, all right, boys, what scene are you going to do? What play have you selected? And Chuck said, we're going to do this one from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oh, very nice. That's an excellent play, and I'm sure that the boys, he goes, are one of you playing Puck? We sort of staggered back. We didn't even read that much. We went through the damn thing, picked this thing out because there were three guys talking, and somehow I liked the idea of a guy named Bottom. So that's how we really actually selected. She said, and that's how we started. She said, well, would you please, before you begin, would you please tell the class why you selected that very, very funny play and how you happened to select the scene that you did select. Now tell them why you enjoy this scene. Well, the three of us are I said the only thing I could say. I said, well, Chuck, tell her why we picked it. Chuck said, well, it's got three people in it, and she said, well, yes, but is that the only reason why you selected that scene? What scene did you select? Well, we're going to do a scene here with the bottom, and oh my, I know exactly the scene you're going to do. You're going to do the scene in the forest with the by that time I could see it sinking in the west, and the class is getting this bored look on their faces already. Well, after about 5 minutes of discussion on why we did the scene, we began the scene. It was the first time I've ever run into what could be called total stage block. Now, we were supposed to learn the scene, so we were supposed to act it out. We didn't get up there with the books. Now, I didn't have the block. Chuck Hassan suddenly turned into Ralston. He turned into cream of wheat. He's standing there with his face just frozen. And I said things like, I remember repeating my line over and over again. Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw. And he just looked at me. And then I went, hee-haw. And finally, Miss McCullough stepped in and said, boys and girls, now this shows just exactly what I mean by not preparing your work. We had worked on that thing night after night for a solid week. We practiced it 3 hours a night. We got up in front of the stage, and the minute we got up there, Chuck Hassan turned into cream of wheat. And she says, boys and girls, I just want to tell you that this is a result of not preparing, and I just want to say that I hope the rest of you are better prepared than that. Shakespeare is to enjoy, and I'm just so sorry that you boys just didn't take it seriously enough. Now, you go back to your seats, and would Esther Jane please come up here with... We sat down, and I remember that bus ride home in silence. Because we thought we were going to have a lot of fun. We had prepared this thing, and Chuck came and he had a funny little thing he was going to do, and he had his funny hat that he was going to put on and all that jazz. Enjoy. It must be depressing, though. I have to say this. I have, at one time or another, attempted in various ways to stand in front of a class and teach, and to look down on that crowd of totally uninvolved faces. I mean, looking at it on the other side. But Miss E. McCullough's voice has always remained with me, that hoarse, and the jangle of her ceramic, handmade Mexican jewelry. And she had a curious, strong perfume that she always wore, some kind of an exotic woodland scent. She liked to think was somehow exotic. And the rustle of those tweed skirts. And she'd come striding into the room, and she wore space shoes. The kind of strong lady. And she wore space shoes. And she had these jade hair clips. So she'd look down at all of us from that Olympian peak of understanding and feeling and knowing all things cultural. And some she turned on, others were indifferent, and then there were others she turned completely off. And the ones she turned on later became handmade jewelry fans. I took that wonderfully interesting trip to Peru, and I brought back some wonderful slides, and I'd love to show them to the ladies of the PTA. That's another world. And they all became, almost to a man and to a lady in later life, players of the recorder, singers of Welsh folk songs. One of the best satires I've ever seen on that level. Did you ever see Lucky Jim? With the fantastic scene of all the people sitting around singing Elizabethan part songs. A great scene. Look for it the next time you see it in the movies.
By recording from New York, you've been listening to Inside Gene Shepherd. Be sure to join us Friday at 7 o'clock for our next Shepherd program. And now stay tuned for Jack Armstrong, which follows in 5 minutes.